In this video, we're going to talk about materials in FLUIDRAY, and I'm using here a scene from 3ds Max. So it's a complete scene. It has some interiors and people there. So some of these materials have been recognized by FLUIDRAY, but some others not. And some of those have textures and unwrapped textures also, and others they have just simple materials. So when you import, we saw many different ways we can import inside FLUIDRAY. So when you import, sometimes it's going to detect with materials, sometimes not. So in that case, don't worry, you can recreate it inside FLUIDRAY. So in this first video, we're going to address the most basic parameters and channels of the materials, so the most basic effects, and then we're going to move on to more complex things later. So we're going to start as usual from the simplest things, and then we're going to proceed. So we saw that we have libraries here that we can use to apply materials onto our objects. When we select an object, we can also see how the material is behaving by going into the material tab on the right side. So we have libraries on the left side, parameters on the right side, and we can start to play around with parameters. We can customize those. So I can name this wall and I can change here all these channels. So what a material is basically and synthetically is an amount of different effects which are stacked one on top of the other. So it's the combination of different parameters, a combination of different layers of different effects that they're going to give you then the final result. Now this one here of course is a default material, which is going to look like a gray material, and you see there we have a base color and then we have some parameters already set up, so it's not completely let's say default, but we already have some specular there, some base color, some roughness. Now these are all the basic parameters that we're gonna see in this video and we're gonna explain. So if I change here the base color, this is gonna be a really simple thing to do. So the simplest thing to do is to apply a single value, then you have the color, then you have the texture, which is an image applied on a particular channel, and sometimes you also have mapping to which is another important part of defining materials, but we're gonna talk about this later. You can open up an advanced panel here of channels and effects and parameters that you can use. So you have some extra things that you can define on your material. And here, so we can select and start to play around with materials. And we're going to start with the basic things, again, with values and colors. And then we're going to proceed with textures and mapping later. So if we go here, this is the 3ds Max folder. We can see this this is a scene from the 3ds Max video course, and if you're interested you can check the 3ds Max video course in the channel and you can check the lessons. Now if you want to create some more advanced effects and also a more complex mapping, like this one here, this is an unwrap mapping, and this cannot be done in FLUIDRAY. So everything that concerns the 3D modeling part and the 3D texturing, mapping, and so on, there are some other software to do that. You can use 3D software like Maya, Cinema 4D, Blender, and so on. So if you're interested, give a look to the course in 3ds Max. And so you can see here that also we can apply, well, materials work more or less in the same way in every software, so they are always based on the same concepts. So we're gonna see a little bit of theory here that can be applied to any software. First of all, PBR, or physically based rendering. What is this? Now this is a particular way to create materials and to render materials, which is gonna try to simulate what happens in reality. So PBR materials are based on what are like physical reactions in the real world. And what a material does in the real world is essentially reacting to light. So based on how the material is going to react to light, we're going to have different effects, which could be like a mirror effect or a glossy effect or a rough material effect. So we're gonna see how we can address all these different effects and parameters. And again, these are just the basics of what we're gonna do, and then we're gonna move into the scene. We are going to do a little bit of practice. So well, these are the part concerning the mapping right here on the top. And then we have the first layer here is the base color, and then we have some of these channel, like the normal, can only be used with textures, so we're gonna skip those for the moment. We're gonna focus on the basic, which are specular tint, roughness, and well, these are the most important. And we have like transparency. So the first thing we need to address is reflections and refractions, or transparency and the specularity or glossiness of our object. Base color is just the most superficial part of your material, and you can use again a simple color or click on the plus icon there and apply a texture. And then we have here metallic. Now this is probably the first thing you need to decide, which is whether your material is a metal or not, because in reality, in real life, we have metallic and non-metallic materials. So this is the first, let's say, switch, the first option you need to address. And non-metallic materials are also called dielectrics, so they are usually bad conductors of electricity and heat. Metals instead are good conductors. So this is the difference in physically terms. And you can see that if you increase the number of the single value of metallic to 1, you're gonna have a metal instead of having any other material. So you can go from 0 to 1 in these values. So you can work just with the simple values to customize and change the aspect of your material. Now here we also have other values that have been applied. So I already have that metallic look, but I can also do other things here, like having a mirror effect or a chrome effect by changing the specular and the roughness. So specularity, if we again do a little bit of theory first, we can see that is going to be a way that the light is going to be reflected by the object. So it's all about how the light reacts with the object. So when I have a specular or glossy material, the light is going to be like bounced back to your eye in a concentrated beam. So it's going to be like going only in one direction. When we have diffuse effect, or when we have a rough surface or the roughness effect, the light is going to be scattered around. It's going to be going into many different directions. So if I go down here a little bit more, you can see also other examples. You can see a specular reflection there and a diffuse or rough reflection. So every material reflects light. It's going to bounce the light back into the scene, but depending on how the surface is done, we'll have different results. So roughness is not going to be as a clean reflection as something really specular. So specular and roughness, they're like the opposite. So to have a mirror effect here, you need to increase the specularity to 1, so you can have 100% specularity. And if you use roughness, you need to decrease the roughness to 0. So the material surface, the object surface, shouldn't be rough at all if you want to have clean, perfect reflections like that.